So are there people out there right now who want to get tested but can't get tested because of the testing apparatus, whether that's in Indiana or in Los Angeles or in Texas? Is the testing protocols as bad as I hear when I watch the news?
Yeah, definitely.
Speak to that, Dr. Kwanzaa.
No, I mean, seriously, we have, I think it's all relative to access. And so if you are a person who has access, like you have a lot of money, you're rich and famous, yeah, you can get you a test. But if you don't have a lot of access, or, you have to ride, 3 buses to get to a testing site, are you more likely to get that done? I mean, sure.
Now, Dr. Kwanzaa, hold on a second. Explain that to me, because you just said something that I think a lot of people think, but I want them to have facts. How is it that you're more likely to be able to be tested if you are famous and wealthy than if you are poor and unknown? What's the factual difference?
Make your call. It's all, at the end of the day, if we want to be real, it's economics. I mean, economics is a driver, whether we want to acknowledge that or not, whether we're talking about healthcare or we're not, or we're talking about any aspect of life that has some component where there's a company that has the ability to control and reproduce and then disseminate testing kits or whatever. There's always some form of economics related to that. So the higher you are up the chain, the easier it's going to be. Because for you, it may be just a simple phone call to your concierge doc who's got a hookup with the private lab down the street. But if you don't have that and you don't know who to call, and you don't know, what if you don't have Wi-Fi? What if you don't know where the testing centers are? What if you can't log on to get a PIN to get access to a testing site? So there's a lot of variables that are impeding people, even though we are seeing, more testing centers popping up. I think Walgreens is about to introduce it. So they're putting it in more traveled places, but we're still going to find a disparity in communities where there is poor access to transportation, unless it's mobile. In hyper-dense situations like prisons, are we paying for COVID tests for inmates?
Great question. Dr. Noel, I see you shaking your head. I'm going to turn you loose. Go ahead.
All the same. I think that the difficulty with access is multifold. Obviously, people can't get to the testing centers. People don't know where they are, but you also have to think of it from a top-down type of thing as well. Yes, it's economical, but when you're a physician, and I'm not going to put myself in this lump, I'm going to speak more towards the physicians who may be in the Los Angeles at the large facilities where the celebrities may or may not go. Let somebody find out you didn't test Gwyneth Paltrow and she ends up with COVID. There's going to be a problem. So there is
facts.
A lot of people feeling as though they can throw away certain communities. And we've seen that in healthcare across the board. This isn't a new phenomenon. It's just something that we're all talking about right now. Wow. I do believe that there is a huge racial disparity to testing. I believe there's a social economical disparity to testing, as well as understanding treatment, understanding what to do. It's just, it's a nightmare.
You know, Nurse Alice, I'm going to ask you a question, more of a philosophical question than a medical one. And it is this: you would think that in the middle of a global pandemic, when a disease is a respecter of no station, no manufactured category of our humanity, that race and economic status would not matter. But here we are again. If you are wealthy and if you are of a certain station or race in life, you get treated better in the healthcare system. Nurse Alice, come on, talk to me, because I need some.
Lord. Okay. So
help me.
So I'll say this. So let's be quite honest. There is a mistrust of African Americans trusting the healthcare community. That's facts. That goes all the way back from the Tuskegee study and other things that have happened. There's definitely more healthcare providers that don't look like us taking care of us. And we mentioned this, the economics behind this. And what we know that COVID-19 does not discriminate. We know it doesn't.
Right.
We know that people who are at highest risk are those who are in frequent and prolonged exposure to people who have possibly been infected, and those with pre-existing conditions are at higher risk. Those people with the pre-existing conditions that are at higher risk for more complications are people that look like us, because we have the diabetes, high blood pressure, and all of those things. And that is because many of us, because I'm a person of color, I'm going to say us, have not gone to our doctor. We have not gone for our screening. We have not put health in the forefront or prioritize it the way that it should. So in this global pandemic, now when it's a race for our life, we kind of started behind the 8 ball. And because we're not, many of us are not rich, wealthy, famous, and can't make that quick phone call to my concierge physician, I'm out of luck. And it's not fair, it's not right, it should not be, but that's what it is. And I think this COVID-19 is just, pulling back the curtain onto all of the racial disparities, inequities in the systems that exist. And we need to talk about that, because we need to demand racial data that speaks specifically to people of color that look like us, the places in our community, so we can actually tackle this problem. Because we're not the ones pulling the strings here. So we're not in the power to decide where the tests get to go and who gets tested and all those things. And
well, Nurse Alice, I'll see you a point and raise you a point, because everything you just said is not only eminently valuable, but it leads and points toward this statement that we need to be demanding racial justice as it relates to testing. I mean,
absolutely.
And you would think that, I mean, maybe I'm just naive. Dr. Kwanzaa, help me, because you have that, you look like my sister, the way that my sister looks at me when she wants to say, boy.
No, you're right. I mean, you're 100% right. I think that this pandemic, I mean, there's been a lot of articles that have been written we haven't seen in a while, which is that it is highlighting the racial inequities and inequalities that have been present in this country since we came over here as slaves. And so, if you look at the economic history of African Americans in this country, I mean, it makes sense as to why we're seeing it more highly in African Americans. The death rate is higher in African Americans, no matter what scale you're looking at, and especially in areas where there's really severe infections going on, like Chicago, Louisiana, and it is again an access issue. Like Louisiana only has 14,000 beds in the state, period. So how do you rectify caring for people in a hyper dense urban environment with 14,000 beds across a state? Like, that's crazy. So it just again highlights, in our country where we place value. And we know that in urban communities, there's a higher rate of pollution, which causes asthma. There's a higher rate of less affordable housing, in which people are not owning their own home. They're having to live, either in multi-unit facilities or homes. And there's more people in their household because 40% of African Americans own a home, the rest don't. And so it's
and food deserts and food insecurity, and Flint still doesn't have clean water. How about that?